to handle a crisis like this one. I will not speak a lot because we have an esteemed panel that is going to take us through leaders in their own right, leaders of religious movements, leaders in academia, leaders in civil society that are going to be speaking and really ensuring that we are all engaging. So I think we all know the rules of the game. But please, if you are not speaking, and mute yourself, you'll only unmute yourself when you are speaking. Secondly, we are recording this session so that many more people will benefit from this discussion. We ask for your permission for that. Thirdly, let's engage. Let's engage. We have got the question and answer session placed there underneath where you can put your questions, and the panel members during the discussion may start to answer you. We've got the chat box there. Some have already started using it, the raising of the hand. I think many of us have part and parcel discussions. But without wasting much of your time, I would like to introduce our first speaker, who is Professor Bridge Maharaj. I will not read his entire bio because when we sent out the invitation, the bio was already there and you know who is talking to you. But briefly, Professor Bridge Maharaj is the professor of geography based at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, KZN, and on the religious side, the deputy president of the South African Hindu Mahasabha, and he's going to be the first speaker. I would like to bring the apology of our executive officer, Professor Sudial, who was very keen to be part and parcel of the discussion, but she has not been able to join today because of other pressing issues. But we are here, and all of us are participating and discussing on this issue. And therefore, I hand over to Professor Maharaj to start us this discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Maposa, and thanks to ASSAf for inviting me. Greetings to my colleagues in the panel. Could you please allow me to share my screen?
Yes, I think Tato will be able to help Professor to do that.
Okay, let me just get the... Okay, I'm assuming you can see my screen.
Yes, we do.
Okay, thank you. So once again, greeting colleagues. I'm going to divide my presentation into 5 sections. I'm aware that I'm speaking to an audience that may not know anything about Hinduism, so I'll just provide a very, very brief overview. And that brief overview is of 5,000 years of Hinduism in a few slides. Then I will talk about the Hindu response to the lockdown, our interventions in the welfare sector, and then the interfaith forums, because we're celebrating diversity and how we come together. And I'll conclude with the Hindu view on the vaccination. So Hinduism is one of the oldest known religions. It's linked with the Indians from the obviously country of India, and Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism were other religions that emerged out of Hinduism. Tolerance and diversity is an important principle, and I'll come back to this. There are many deities, but we worship one divinity. We normally greet by using the phrase namaste, which means I greet the divine in you. So there's no one founder, and that makes it quite different from the other known faiths. There isn't one book. There are There is the impersonal reality, which is Brahman. There are many deities, and we worship symbolically from the concrete to the abstract. So there's this misnomer that Hindus worship idols. Hindus believe in reincarnation, meaning the body dies, but the soul moves on. And one's reincarnation is linked to karma, the balance sheet of our deeds on earth. And the ideal is to reach moksha, where you become one with the Lord and you are out of this cycle of birth and death. So we have the ultimate reality, the ultimate divinity, Brahman, and then we have the Trinity, Brahma, who is the creator, and Shiva, the destroyer, and Vishnu, the preserver. And we also have the female forms of gods. I'll come to that a little later. Now, Hindus worship through seeing, and I said we spoke about the images of the divinity and the deities. Now, Hindus also worship at home. Most Hindus would have a place of worship, and this is kind of a traditional lamp that would be in most Hindu homes in South Africa, certainly. And that's one of the reasons I think we adjusted fairly quickly when the temples or the mandirs were closed, because we know that we continue, worship doesn't stop. This is a list of some of the scriptures. The original is the Rig Veda, and that's the ultimate source of all issues relating to Hinduism. And I'm not going to go into other lists here. There are many. The Bhagavad Gita is one of the most well-known in what is called the Kali Yuga, the present era. If there is any contradictions, then the Rig Veda is the ultimate source of authority. And all of these books, they don't contradict each other. They merely reinforce the eternal divine truths. We have several, rules and regulations, and I've summarized it into 20. So I know the Bible talks about the 10 commandments. So we've got 20, but we can summarize it into 10 as well. And all faiths, focus on truth, honesty, integrity, self-discipline. These are all principles that apply to all faiths. And then I'm going to talk briefly about some of the principles that I think have special relevance for South Africa. We talk a lot about human rights in South Africa. And in the faith sector, for example, in Hinduism, there's a principle of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which comes from one of our scriptures called the Maha-Upanishad, meaning the world is one family. And then the other concept in Hinduism is dharma, which I would translate as righteousness. So righteousness means in all facets, whether it's at home, in one's work, or in the community, continuously contributing to the greater good of humanity. And that in itself embraces the essence of human rights. In terms of democracy, and I'm referring to Hindu scriptures, these are not my views. I am merely communicating the scriptural truths here. So in the Rig Veda, it refers to the people have chosen the leader. Then the king must follow the wishes of the people. Once again, democratic governance. And what type of person do you choose to lead? One who is ever ready to sacrifice his life for the state, to rule family and establish truth and justice. Equality. So in the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord Krishna tells us, I look upon all creatures equally. And then in the Atharvaveda, all have equal rights to articles of food and water. That means no one will be left wanting. The yoke of the chariot of life is equally placed on the shoulders of all. All should live together in harmony, supporting one another like the spokes of a wheel. Now, this is a very interesting metaphor. where we are all connected, regardless of our status or position in the hierarchy of society. The chairperson spoke about diversity, and we always celebrate South Africa's diversity. The concept of Sarva Dharma Bhava refers to the Hindu respect for all religions. The Rig Veda says, truth is one, wise men call them by different names. There are several sacred mantras or chants or prayers in our scriptures where we talk about the Lord protecting us together, meaning the entire humanity, including plants and animals, may nourish us together. Let there be peace in the world. We've just come out of August and we know about our challenges with gender. Girls should train themselves to be educated. They have equal rights inheriting property. They have equal rights to be appointed as rulers. So from the scriptural perspective, there isn't any discrimination. We know that there are patriarchal tendencies in the faith, and so I'm not going to gloss over that. Hinduism also recognizes the female form of God. So from next week, and I think it's the 7th of October, for 9 days, there's the festival of Navaratri, where we celebrate the female form of God. And then Hinduism promotes peace and non-violence, and the living exemplar of that was Mahatma Gandhi, who started the Satyagraha campaign from South Africa. So the peace mantra, may there be peace in the whole sky, the external vast space on earth, in water, in all living beings. May there be peace in all trees, plants, and herbs. So this notion of seeking harmony and balance across the universe pervades our scriptures. And linked to this is respect for the environment. I'm not going to go into the details, but you say plants and waters are treasures for generations. As a geographer, that basically talks about sustainable development. And then being in South Africa, I'm very interested in what our scriptures say about corruption, and I'm talking about all our religion. What's important is South Africa is actively religious. That means 80% profess to belong to a faith, and at least, according to the last census, at least 80% had gone to a place of worship in the past 3 months. That's what they talk about, active religious affiliation. And if that is so, then we have to ask the question, to what extent is the faith sector and the faith leaders must take some responsibility for our challenges in terms of issues relating to the failure of integrity, the lack of honesty in various facets of our social and political lives. So the Hindu scriptures talk about Satyameva Vijayata. Truth alone shall triumph. I know there may be some folks who are listening or watching who were the old University of Durban Westfield, which is now merged to form University of KwaZulu-Natal with the old Natal. This was the motto of the old UDW. My favorite is the quote from the Bhagavad Gita. Whenever there's a decline of dharma or righteousness and the rise of unrighteousness, to protect the virtuous and to destroy the wicked and to re-establish dharma, the Lord manifests himself. And this is linked to different scriptures in which the Lord took different forms to come and guide humanity out of difficulties. And you have a similar scenario in the Bible and the Quran. So to get to the heart of the topic, the Mahasabha had to make a call on the 16th of March to send out a message to say that we are requesting, it was almost an instruction, but we do it diplomatically, that we have to close our places of worship. We have to stop public worship and gatherings. And this was the first notice, and you'll see a few more later in the presentation. One of the first events that was affected was the ISKCON Festival of Chariots. If you know Durban, it's around the Easter period. It's very popular, and it's the highlight of the Easter weekend, I think, in Durban. And it attracts lots of visitors of all faiths. And at that time, there was optimism because ISKCON was saying, and I'm sure they wouldn't mind me using the slide, postpone, new date to be announced. The feeling was, well, maybe in 2 or 3 months, we may be back to normal and we will come back. And then the other important temple that was affected is the Superngo Maryama temple. This temple is located about 10 minutes from the old Durban airport, which is in South Durban. And there's a heritage connection with this temple. It was one of the earliest temples when the indentured arrived in South Africa in 1860, indentured laborers. And the first holiday that they received was Good Friday, which was obviously a Christian holiday. And when they discovered that everyone was worshiping, sorry. Yeah, I'm moving up. Sorry about that. I'm assuming I'm back online. So the people were worshiping, and they would go to this temple, and it became an annual Easter event for more than 150 years, and they had to stop operations. So the cancellation of live religious satsangs and pilgrimage was a big challenge for all faiths, and we had to reinvent ourselves. So lots of people started switching to streaming online services, etc. The Mahasabha once again made another call for organizations to observe different festivals, etc., indoors. This is the Navratri festival, which is advertised for next week. And then we had a whole set of rules and regulations should the temples open, and they had to comply with social distancing, etc. A big issue was funerals. How do you conduct funerals? Those are clearly strict restrictions on who could attend, and only very close families. And there were challenges in crematoriums. So this was a public crematorium that was having a lot of pressure because this was a community. The accredited crematorium was built and managed by the community. The government crematoriums run by the Durban municipality in Mobeni and Tungat collapsed. And I don't have to tell you why. Once again, in the second wave, we had to announce to communities to be careful. And the big challenge was with the loss of life, lack of connectivity with people and family and friends, traditional mourning and bereavement ceremonies, etc., were curtailed. So we organized a public webinar for grief counseling, and we had specialists, priests, and registered counselors and psychiatrists on. This is on, it was open to all communities, and we know there were international people also watching it. It's on our website. Then we supported the public call for funds from the president, and we were operating on the principle of Vasudev Kudumbakam. We worked with Radio Lotus, which was partnered with us. And in total, we collected, I think, 1.4 million. Then there was a big demand for welfare intervention. And we, since January 2021, we've been involved in a number of welfare initiatives across race, religion, and culture. All you have to do is say you're in trouble and we deliver we didn't ask you any questions. And these are some of the organizations that helped us with distributions. The big challenge was for us to come together on an interfaith basis to promote the vaccinations. And the South African Council of Churches played a big role here and established the Religious Forum Against COVID-19, which was to get interfaith collaboration, and it works very well. And one of the big challenges, we're encouraging vaccine registrations and jabs within the communities. And there is a big resistance, as we should know. So last week we launched the vaccination campaign, which is running for the next 2 weeks in the faith sector. These are some of the different slides we are promoting. Prayer against COVID, promoting vaccination again. And then we had a webinar looking at the links between science and religion. And I'll conclude on this point, the Hindu perspective on vaccinations. Of course, there's a link between science and religion, and Albert Einstein expressed it very well. Science without religion is lame, and religion without science is blind. Albert Einstein said we owe a lot to Indians who taught us how to count, without which there'll be no worthwhile scientific discovery. And then the celebrated, scientist Carl Sagan spoke about the fact that the closest religion came to science was in Hinduism. In Hinduism, life is sacred and there is no prohibition against vaccinations. There is reference to vaccinations in one of the scriptures called the Harivamsha Purana. I won't go into the details. I know we got time constraints. And then there was the ethical dilemma. Do we take part in experiments for the vaccine? And there was a professor from the UK who actually said that by offering my body as part of this, experiment, I'm actually serving humanity. So it's part of, in a sense, what we call dan or dana, a form of charity or donation for the greater good of humanity. So I'm going to conclude by saying that the South African Hindu Mahasabha supports any scientifically tested and proved vaccine that would heal the afflicted and must be available to the poor and disadvantaged in the global South, because we know there is vaccine politics and nationalism. Fairness and justice, the clarion call of all religions, must trump prophets. The voices of religious leaders should be more vocal on this issue. If religion cannot contribute to the greater good of humanity, then it ceases to be. And the last slide, this was a peer-reviewed article in the European Heart Journal stating that the healthcare workers who are at the front line of the pandemic were benefiting from the lessons of the Bhagavad Gita, which is one of the contemporary, very popular scriptures for Hindus. Thank you. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Professor, for that presentation and showing us how the Hindu community issues that have affected us during the coronavirus pandemic. We will take the questions later. Let's just allow the second speaker. And meanwhile, let me ask the participants, if you have questions, please use the chat, use the question and answer so that we can be able to also save a bit of time. Our next speaker is Sultan Sheikh Yassin Mohammed Yaqin Alaman. If I'm not pronouncing your names properly, you will accept my apology for that. But he comes all the way from the Muslim community, and he would like to share something as well in terms of what the Muslim community has been doing to deal with some of these issues that COVID-19 has brought into the faith community. Over to you, Sultan.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. the organizers. Thank you to avail me this opportunity to share just a few points regarding how COVID-19 has taken us in our Muslim community. I think I'm clear that side there. You can hear me?
You are very clear, Sultan. Continue.
Okay. So I'll be protocol observed. I'll be straight to the point, and I've been briefed how I must say. Our discussion is been directed by the first speaker by the time I joined in, the Professor Baraj from the Hindu community. Thank you so much for that sharing of what happened regarding COVID-19 to your communities. But for us, as a Muslim in South Africa, as a country, and in the world as a whole, it was a very, very, very big impact. And I'm gonna point out the positivity and the negative. But firstly, the negative impact is one. The first important thing is to know that Islam is a faith that is very, very, very fundamental, and it does not remove its foundations. If you remove one foundation, according to our faith, the philosophy says, you are doomed, you are no longer a Muslim, and you're out of Islam. So because of that very strong foundation, our people were so much affected by the lockdowns when they were imposed on the communities. And the first one was, in Islam, there are 5 foundations or pillars that make a person to be Muslim, and one is to perform the daily mandatory prayers in gatherings in the mosque. So being a fundamental pillar, when that was broken by the COVID-19, it was a very, very, very big negative impact to the Muslim community, because there was a forced closure of all mosques. Some people, they call them churches. And the worst incident that took place is when the police in Mpumalanga and in another area, they were tipped off of some community praying. And when you were in the middle of prayers, it was like about lunchtime, the police entered into the mosque. They have to arrest everybody. We're in the position of prostration, worshiping their God. That was the worst the police can ever do. Triggered anger to the people. The community was disoriented and they are so very much angered. So that is one most important thing, that even a small detail about Islam was not informed to our community and the police, the lawmakers, that when the Muslims are praying, don't intervene into their prayers, wait for them to stop, then engage them. They actually entered with their shoes in the mosque. And that is the worst thing which, according to Islam, we believe you must not enter into a holy place, which is a mosque, with your shoes. But then, because of the argument, I think you've seen this, it was a viral video. One of the attendant of the prayers was just, they are so frightened. So when they argued with the police, one of the police guys said that, don't think Muhammad is greater than the president. That was the worst insult. And you know how hot we are in Islam. When you speak about Muhammad, it doesn't matter you are right or wrong. Don't even say anything about him. It was going to end up into a very big fight between the whole entire Muslim community. But thanks to us leaders and to God, we calmed down our community, just they insulted our prophet, all this because of the COVID-19. That's one point. Another point is that most of the lockdown regulations she observed as by the government, it was contrary to Islam. And that's the first one, when the government said that we are going to be using sanitizers to all our prayer houses when they opened up. I think that is level, there are so many levels. This is level 2 or 3, I'm not aware. But in a certain level of lockdown, the mosques were reopened again, and they say, in order for you to enter into this gathering, you must use a sanitizer. The sanitizers is said to have 70 or 80% to be alcohol. Now, everybody here knows Islam with alcohol, we don't go along. It's totally forbidden a Muslim to come near any alcohol. that even in any daily things that we use, either cosmetics, either some drinks, or a soap, or anything, even a perfume, that has a small percentage of alcohol, we don't use it. So that was a very big challenge that was imposed upon us in our community. I think in the Muslim community, we are the most affected by the COVID-19 thing as God as faith is concerned. Another point was the inside in the mosque, when we are performing that fundamental prayer, we call it Salah in Arabic language. It is a mandatory that everybody must stand without any distance between the people who are standing in one line straight, no any distance in between, vertically and horizontally. So horizontally, we are allowed to have one line in front, one line behind, but vertically, from one man to another man, or from one lady to another lady, it is a law that you are not allowed to leave even one small distance. Now, the COVID-19 says that you can't stand closer to your inmate as you are praying unless you are in a distance of 2 meters or 1.5 meters. That's totally contrary to our norm, our form of praying, and we don't discuss these prayers. That was, according to us in Islam, a killing point. So what we did, most of us, we totally just abandoned to go into the prayers. That's another point. The third point is around the lockdown, we had our Eid. Eid, these are the gathering after fasting the whole month of Ramadan. People, they all gather from all other areas. We either gather into the mosque, or you can go in an open ground where we pray to God to thank Him for having guided us to fast the whole month of Ramadan. Now, the worst was we were abolished even to perform any gathering. That was another point, that our celebration of Eid depends on that prayer. Without that prayer, the whole celebration is cancelled and is meaningless. And when that celebration is meaningless, meaning even the fasting, the 30 days of the whole month of Ramadan is also meaningless. Now, you can see how COVID-19 was a very big negative impact when it comes to Islam. Now, the fourth point, which is a very important point, is as soon as COVID-19 kicked in, our people in Mecca is the holy place for Islam, where we have that black stone or the black house, which people go, they gather around it, they circumambulate around it, they move around it in prayers to God. This is a ritual, which is an Islamic ritual. Now, look how this was a very bad impact, that because of the authorities of that land, for the fear of COVID-19, they closed the total closure, that nobody was allowed to come from any country to go and visit that holy place in Mecca. And when this happened, this is the fifth pillar of Islam. When this happened, it's called the Hajj. When this happened, we are all totally killed because people, they have booked in advance, the travel agencies, the airlines. And when this was imposed on us, we thought that we don't know what's going to happen, but this is the worst that a coronavirus can bring towards us. Now, all these negativity I've mentioned, they have impacted our society and community in a very negative way, in such a way that we are about to protest, to say that let's all go gather around the president or our world leaders, tell them to at least adjust their lockdown, and then they can avail us our freedom of worship, our rights to worship to God, because we have felt suffocated and being totally wiped out of our faith. Now, the positivity to the COVID-19 impact was this one here. During COVID-19 lockdown, the first total lockdown, we appreciate our community people became very, very generous, because we know that some of our communities, people are not even able to have some savings, to buy food that can take them through all those 4 months of the March 2020 COVID-19 lockdown, total lockdown. Now, we came out as an organization as a community, as individual, that it doesn't matter which a person, religion was coming from. When COVID-19 came, what matters most was my neighbor has bread. Is my neighbor eating? Even though he's a Christian or he's a Hindu, from any part of the faith, we are collaborated. Even to a Muslim person, when you see you've got no bread and go to your Hindu neighbor, she or he could give this bread very quickly. So the hospitality increased between the interfaith people, those of different religion. We started helping each other in that line without forgetting our originality, but because of the need to help each other in this COVID-19 lockdown. And that's one positive thing that I appreciated about it, and I appreciated our community in advance, those who see this webinar. And also our government, that's the time when our government came up, we recorded, or we saw that even there in some provinces, the government managed to put water where there's no water. The social development came up with some handouts, some help of the food for the people. You just call, they bring the food on your doorstep, which the government never did before or has not been done yet. Now, this brought the government closer to people. And even I saw some of the provinces where the government collected the street people. They took them into a place where they washed them, to make them clean, they cut off their hair, they give them food for a full month. Now, this is a positivity where our leaders became too closer to the community and we're helping those in need. That is another positive impact. The third positive impact is that this has brought our communities to think about faith. For example, you here in the Science Academy, you never thought about how a faith can be with regard to the politics. But now it was like a battleground between the politicians and the faith people. Because for the faith people, we are leaders of masses. And we are totally, most of the time, opposite to politicians. Because the politicians say, obey us, because we are your leaders. But we say to our people, obey God, because God is our creator. Now, in these two leaders, both of us, we always give our people what we think is right. Now, in this regard, the government won because they use force. They've got military, they've got police. They depend on what science can tell them what to do. For example, the science has recommended the governments and those in authority that in order to deal with COVID-19, we must use the vaccination, and now it is here. Now, in this regard, our leaders in the government, they never, not even one day, consulted the faith community whether we can pray to God and we ask him for his mercy to take away this pandemic. They totally depended only on the people of the science, and then even their budget, the money was put there in billions. You can hear our president was speaking about billions of money, bring the vaccine, and was financing the scientific researches. But the government has never put down some finances to say, let us go and find our interfaith leaders. Those can take us into this line of praying to God also to take away the pandemic. And that's the most important part. Because previously in history, without wasting your time, we know that when we heard pandemics, the leaders, they tried their best first. They tried their best first, but when they failed, they ran back to us, the leaders of faith. When we pray to God, God answers and hears us. I can give you an example. When it's too much drought, there's no any science that can bring rain here down on earth. No any president that can save the birds, the animal, the insect, the trees to die from too much of the sun. When they come to us, religious leaders, we gather, we pray to God. Before we leave the meeting, the rain will be dropping down. That's an example, which is we don't go to heaven, but speak those in power of the heaven. So the leaders neglected that part, that we can pray to God regarding this and can take away. Now that depends on the person's faith. Now, another point which I think I'll be stopping with, I can see when they want to stop me, isn't it? I can see where.
Just make some concluding remarks so that we can finish with the
now,
we'll come back to you with questions. Just conclude.
Yeah, in conclusion, to avail others a chance to continue and they don't be out of time, I just conclude by saying that let the government use all structures which it has got. When it comes to COVID-19, we are all affected equally, but not making decisions based on what scientists say, lest they make a decision also consulting us just leaders, that they can make a proper direction and a proper regulations as got COVID-19 now and in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sultan, for those wonderful words. I hear your passion. I hear your passion, and I didn't fully introduce you that you are also the president of the Moscow.
Yeah, the Muslim Supreme Council of South Africa.
Yes, because I saw that you were struggling with connectivity, so I wanted to give you time quickly before connectivity gives you problems. Thank you so much for a wonderful presentation and all the sides of the coin, the negative and the positive side in your own perspective. I'd like to call upon Dr. Winnie Chirumbula, who is coming from the Christian community. She's the co-founder of Wisdom Through Christ Ministries in Thokoza, Albertine, and she works with a number of other organizations within the Christian community. You saw her bio. I will not read all of it. I'll give you this opportunity, Dr. Chirumbula, to just present on behalf of the Christian community. Over to you, Dr. Chirumbula.
Shalom, shalom, and greetings to our host, Dr. Stanley. And I've been in communication with Sistato and my fellow guests today. I greet you all. It is such an honor and a privilege that I have been afforded today in such a gathering today to speak of the current challenges that we as the faith community are faced with. At the beginning of the pandemic, which was March 2020, in fact, it started we started hearing this from the news towards the end of 2019. And here in Mzansi, or in South Africa, we thought that this is something that is happening very far away from us. It will never come to affect us. I remember when it was being reported in the news as people dying in China, and we thought it was something, it was them there, and this will end up there it will not come to Africa. But I remember on the 5th of March, when we received the first report of the first cases in South Africa, and the first death, which happened around the 16th of March, 2020. And we thought it was just gonna be, those 5 people that died and that's it. And little did we know, or did we realize the magnitude of the army that is coming, an unseen army called COVID-19. And we started praying as the Christian community. We started gathering, we started praying. And I must say, honestly, we thought it was something that was gonna, take a little while. I remember there was even a prophecy from the late prophet T.B. Joshua around March he said this was going to go away around the 15th of April. Little did we know that this army that is coming, it was going to prolong even up to today. The scientists are saying that this army that we are faced with is going to continue even up to 2023, 24, they don't know. But we are here and we found ourselves, I remember on the 26th of March, 2020, our first family meeting, President Cyril Ramaphosa called the first family meeting on the 26th of March, 2020. And he declared on that meeting that that was the first lockdown, and the country went on total shutdown. They didn't even, back then, it was not a level 5. The things of the levels came later, but it was just a total shutdown. Everything, the churches, it was like we just woke up and he said it's starting on the morning of the 27th. And it was like we were dreaming. The fact that we can't go to church, we as Christians, yes, we do pray in our homes. We teach our congregants that you must pray at home. We pray in the morning when we wake up. We pray, during the day. We pray in the evenings. But we all during the week, we also have services. Others have services on Tuesdays. Others have services on Wednesdays. This is during the week. And then others have services on Saturdays, and others have services on Sundays. And all of that was just shut down like that. And we could not apprehend it. And we began to pray, hoping that this was gonna go away very, very soon. And time went, it was not going away. People started dying in numbers. We as the pastors started receiving calls of our members dying. And now we had to go, we are faced with this challenge. We have to arrange the prayers during the week to pray with the families. And that was not allowed, to go with the families, to go and have prayers to encourage the family during the week, because in our Christian communities, when there is a death, we don't bury like the Muslims. A person can die today, tomorrow you are burying, or the same day you are burying. But with us Christian communities, especially in the Black communities, when someone dies, there is a process for the weekend. If a person dies on Monday, that person is going to be buried on weekend, either Saturday or Sunday. And during the week, we, the pastors, will be conducting the services with the family, but that was not possible now. It was such a challenge. We also were not briefed as to how to conduct these services during the week. How do we encourage the family in times of grief and mourning? So it is a new thing altogether unto us, that we cannot even visit the families. It was difficult. It was very difficult. And now, as pastors, we have to conduct the service, the funeral services. We have to wear the mask and all these things to cover ourselves. It was very, very, very difficult. But by God's grace, we are still here and we are still continuing. And then as time progressed, our members were being, demoralized, where they were suffering from emotional breakdown, because losing someone, other families were losing you know, up to 4 members. They were burying every week. You find that the mother passed on, then the following week is the father, then the other week is the aunt, the other aunt. It's very, very difficult. And as pastors or
you are frozen. I think there is a network problem on your side. Are you able to come through? Maybe after you can assist us in terms of communicating with you. Maybe she'll rejoin. While we are still on that, we can take a few questions while we solve the issue of the connectivity that we are having right now. Maybe Tato, if you are there, you can read for us some of the questions that we are having there, so that maybe the 2 panel members we have can try to answer. Professor Maharaj is here and the Sultan is here.
Thank you, Dr. Maposa. I'm happy to have a go.
Yes.
There were 2 questions directed to me. One was linked to gender-based violence during lockdown and how the Hindu sector responded. Listen, gender-based violence cuts across all faiths and cultures and races in our country. So it's an issue even in the Hindu sector. We network with, we have the Just for Abused Women in Devon, that helps a lot. Then we network with priests and counselors. In fact, we got a meeting on Wednesday next week, I think, discussing the same matter, how we provide more support. So it is an issue, and we can do more about it. The other issue is about the vaccines and the safety and how fast it was developed. And the reality is, in the first week of September, all patients in the ICU and there were intubation, etc., in Cape Town. I think it was Kuruskia, one of the hospitals, were not vaccinated. When you're looking at those people who have been adversely affected, getting ill or losing their lives in the 3rd wave, 99% were not vaccinated. Now that's the science of the situation. Secondly, the speed of development of this vaccine. Please, people need to note that the vaccine was drawing on previous research. They didn't start researching, looking at vaccines after the outbreak. They've been looking at different scenarios. But more importantly, it's the sharing of knowledge. I know I'm talking to an ASSAf audience, so we have open access, etc. All companies, all institutions involved in research had to share the knowledge. They had to go for blind peer review processes to test that the rigor of what they were doing. And then in terms of the trial runs, a lot more people were available for trials than in previous experiments in trying to develop vaccines. And that's why it was developed so fast. In fact, we should be grateful that it has developed so fast. And certainly from the Hindu sector, there's certainly no kind of prejudice towards the vaccination. It's going to save lives. And it's a proven fact. In the 3rd wave in South Africa, many more people would have been saved if they take the vaccine. We know about the politics, and my colleagues have explained that, and that's the reality. But right now, we've got far more vaccines, and we got resistance. I can tell you, even my own students, I have my final year class, the age 21, 22. More than half of the students say they're not going to take it. So there is a very strong anti-vaccine discourse going around, and we've got to ask ourselves, how do you get back to normality? How do you crank the economy? We got to look at our own context as well. The pandemic had a devastating effect on the economy. We all know about that. How do we rebuild? And I think the responsible decision is to take the vaccine so we start getting back to normality and rebuild. And that's the global agenda. I mean, there is an economic agenda. We also want to save lives. If you stay in hospital for 3 weeks, can you imagine the cost of that?
Okay.
So that's the reality. Thank you.
Yeah. Prof, let me bring back Dr. Chirumbula. I'll come back to you, Sultan. Let me go back to Dr. Chirumbula. She was still making a presentation and she was cut. Let's give her some few minutes to round up and then we'll come back to the questions. Over to you, Doctor. Sorry for the cutting.
Yes, thank you so much. my internet is not behaving today. Yes, I was still on the challenges that we faced. Now, when the church opened during last year, I think it opened in July, the challenge was that it takes only they say, scientists say, or even psychologists, they say it takes 3 weeks, 21 days for a habit to be formed. Now, within that 3 weeks, people have already gotten used to not coming to church. The churches were opened, even though they said the churches were open for 50, or even during the Easter that we missed, the Easter in 2020, for us to come again, it was difficult. Even today, it is still difficult, even though we are trying our best to get our members back to church. It is still difficult. Now, on the solution, what we then decided as the Christian community is to go and use the social platforms. We have indeed, inundated, if I may put it that way, the social platforms. We are having churches on Facebook. We are having churches on YouTube. If you go to YouTube, there's a lot of pastors that are preaching. There's a lot of prayers. Women are praying, men are praying on Facebook. So we are big on social media as the Christian community. And then again, when we come to alleviation of situations or circumstances that came along with COVID challenges, especially the loss of income. Indeed, it is on the pastor, also on our priests. They have suffered a lot because most of our priests are full-time in the churches. They are employed by the churches. And it has come as a very, very huge challenge. Many pastors are depressed today because there is no support from the church, because we get the money from the church. So when people are not coming to church, they are not giving. That is still a challenge even today in the Christian community. A lot of our pastors have lost their incomes. Others have even lost their vehicles, had to be repossessed. Their children they had to be, they have problems with paying their school fees. They have to take their children from private institutions to public schools. So it is still a challenge, but to mitigate those challenges, we have come with the feeding schemes. We have churches, as churches, we have come together, working together with social development. They bring food to us and we distribute. We help the government to distribute food parcels to our communities. So that is what we are engaged in. Even today, we have partnered with government and other business people that are helping us as the faith community. But we still have challenges. Challenges are more because the pandemic is still here. The Delta virus also has dealt a lot of blow. A lot of people have died. We've lost family members. We have lost pastors. We have lost church members. But we are still going on in prayers. We are still praying on social medias. We have a lot of engagement on social medias. Big churches such as the Zion Christian Church, which is now abbreviated as ZCC. they have not even gone back, and they are not even having churches on social media. So that is still a challenge. We have our mainline churches. Some are trying to do like your Methodist churches, your Lutheran churches. They are trying to go on social media, but most of their parishes or parishioners are old men and women that are still on social media platforms. But now, coming on to the vaccines, this is a huge challenge. As a Christian community, I don't want to sit here and lie and say that we have embraced the vaccines. Just as Sheikh was saying, that the Muslims believe in the power from on high. We also are divided like that. The Christian community is divided. There are those that believe that vaccines are demonic and satanic and 666 and all those. And there are those that believe that vaccines are a solution. And there are a group of Christians that believe that prayer is the solution. That's how divided we are. But we are still praying, and we are believing God that God will give us a solution. Speaking on from our side in the fraternity that I belong to, we believe in the work of the scientists, that God has given them the wisdom, and God uses scientists to bring solutions to problems of mankind. And we believe that vaccines are a way to go. We believe that those that feel convicted in their faith and convicted in their consciences to take the vaccines are free to do so. So we don't stop anyone and say as a church or Christians, don't go and vaccinate. We are still saying, if you feel convicted that you can take the jab, you are free to do so. So on that note, without any waste of time, I want to close it that way, that we want to thank government for the efforts that they are taking in making sure that this enemy is dealt with, and therefore we are committed to working hand in hand with government and the scientists and the doctors and everyone else who's bringing a solution to this pandemic. And with those words, I want to close and thank you, and thank everyone for indulging me in this session. I thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Chirumbula. I think yours was a little bit different from other forecast discussions. The forecast, the Muslim and Islam forecast. You were trying to accommodate a large number of various Christian appearances, like you're talking from the traditional mainline, going to the ZCC, the Zionists, the Pentecostals. All those are diversities of the Christian community. And you really tried to cover all those sections. And let's go back to our questions. I think, Tata, you'll help where you need to be reading the question. But if the panelists, you can see the question that is written and addressing you, you can then, just like Professor Maharaj said, you can just address those particular questions. People have been writing questions. I think, Sultan, you are ready to answer some questions. And there was a particular question to you that says, how are the Muslims taking the vaccine issue? Do they agree with it? Do they disagree with it? And maybe why? You are muted. Can you unmute your mic, Sultan Sheikh? Yes, you are okay now.
Yeah, thank you, moderator. The 2 points, the vaccination and the issue of faith or God in COVID-19 solution. I'll start with the question where I saw one of the participants say, Why should we need God, and what God can do for us? And this has captured my attention to say that in our communities, I think I can say 99% we are all faith believers. We believe in God, either in Islam or Christianity. So when we address our communities, it's good to have a priority, the first priority of what the approach of God says in that matter. Now, as regards COVID-19, what we can do as religious leaders is to pray to God to intervene. Like I gave you an example earlier, that when we don't have rain, it's us who bring the rain from the skies, not politicians. That point is noted. Now, come back to vaccination. A vaccine is something which is very, very common, not new to us. And have more than 20 vaccines already we take. Before COVID-19 vaccine came to become a mandatory, everybody to travel, we have yellow in some countries. You cannot travel if you don't have a yellow fever vaccination. You go where the council, they give you a vaccine and a card. And we got used to it. People, they easily go vaccinated. They have that yellow fever card. Then you can't pass in airport. We've got the vaccination of the polio vaccination, which has been here, that can help a person not to become a limping person. We know about it. But the one similar to COVID is yellow fever. Now, according to what is coming towards now, is that the COVID-19 is becoming a mandatory part on all airports in the world. Without it, you cannot go into any country. Now, because it is coming like this, without considering how you feel on your side, but those where you are going to visit, that's what they consider. Being a visitor, you must accept all their requirements before you even say a word.
Maybe certainly I understand that, but the question was directly to say, do the Muslim community accept or reject?
The Muslim community is 80% reject, only 20% accept, and that 20% is that whereby you are forced environmentally or conditionally. We don't believe in this vaccination thing only when you want to take it.
Okay.
For example, for travel purposes.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to someone else. We'll come back to you if there's another question. Tato, is there any question for Dr. Chirumbula? Is there any question that's directed
Dr. Maposa, not that I can see, although there is a hand in the...
There is a hand. There is a hand. Let's take one hand. Reverend Lucas Nkosi will allow you to speak. I think you speak from the Christian point of view. And then after that, Dr. Chirumbula will add on what you said. Open him to speak, Reverend Nkosi. I saw him up his hand, and he has been commenting a lot. So we want to hear one member of the public.
Okay. Thank you, Doc, for the opportunity to talk. Now, generally, like from the feel of, you know, our Christian faith, especially the organization that I represent, and something that we've been raising, especially with the provincial government and in other fora, is because it has to do with the science community, and as well as the messaging from the government that it's not on par. And today I'm listening to speakers, and it's presentation from 3 religious, you know, speakers, and then I'm listening to them. The 3 of them, like myself, we are still in limbo. It's like we have more questions to ask to you as the science community, you know, regarding issues of vaccines and so forth. Because given last year, what happened is we heard from the science community that, you know, in order to challenge this COVID thing, we need to put on masks, we need to sanitize, we need all those non-pharmaceutical measures. And then we ran on those measures, And hence, even in May last year, our argument was around those measures. And we ran the test, like from our side as the Council of Charismatic Churches. What we did, we developed a quality management system that will ensure that we curb the spread of the infection. And then by government's, testimony, there were 3 times in Gauteng province, where we asked government, the provincial government, as to what cases have they experienced where religious sector is concerned in terms of, infections and so on, and what happened, because we wanted to deal with the notion of super spreaders issue where churches or religious sector is concerned. And in their testimony is that there was no incident after that experience, after, reopening of churches. Then we were surprised when the president came up in December 28 to close the religious sector, and then citing the very things that we addressed in May. And then, so it brought confusion, such things. And now came the issue of vaccines. And the messaging now it's that no, vaccines are the way to go, and which we question based on what has the track record with the mask and everything at 95% recovery rate by May this year.
Okay,
and then came vaccines.
Make it short, Reverend, so that we can save it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I said
make it short. Just make it short.
Yeah. No, I'm finishing up. Yeah, by saying now comes the vaccine, and therefore it seems as if now what worked since last year no longer works, and therefore vaccines are imposed, and even the messaging there is not clear, and there's a problem there. So within our sector, that now there's a lot of questions that are not answered properly in the scientific community, and when you question, you are being vilified for questioning the vaccines and so on. And generally, it's not that we have attitude against vaccines, but we have issues with these ones, because there's a lot of questions that are not answered properly, both by government and the scientific community. So help us in that regard as the religious sector. Hence the resistance, and it won't go. And thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Reverend Kosi. I'd like to start with you, Dr. Chirumbula, because Reverend Kosi speaks from the side of the Christian. To just answer the super spreader issue that he raised as the vaccine matter. Yeah. Dr. Chirumbula, you are muted? Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think we like I mentioned, that we are very divided in these issues. The man of God is raising questions regarding the mitigations for COVID, and the government pronouncing the church as a super spreader. Which I think that needs to be addressed with government to say what were your reasons based or upon, if it was not scientifically proven that gathering as a church it then becomes a super spreader. Where I want to come in is in the issue of vaccines. The question that he is the Reverend is saying, that the scientific community is not giving us as a Christian community the answers that we need regarding the vaccines. Yes, we understand that the vaccine is the long-term solution, because we cannot be continuing with wearing of masks. So vaccines are coming in as the long-term solution, and being a long-term solution, the Christian community, all that they want to hear from the science community is maybe how safe these are, what is in the ingredients, what is comprised in the vaccines. I think these are the questions that that even my congregants they ask me, Kuti Mfundisi, we want to know, tell us what is in the vaccine, because there are a whole lot of things that are being said about these vaccines. I think that's where the issue is. The Christian community is not per se against the vaccines, but they want to know what is inside the vaccines. I think that's where the problem is. I thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor. Let me just take one more hand, and then we will come back to all the three panel members, be thinking about the recommendations, because the Academy of Science of South Africa is a public entity that sits in between society, academia, and government. And our recommendations are able to then be used to ensure that the government looks at that for future, pandemics that are coming. This is not the last pandemic, and therefore the voice of religious communities is very, very critical. And this is our role as the Science Academy, to bring together people to talk. And when we have talked, synthesize, your findings and present them to those that are in the policy space, to be able to look at. It doesn't necessarily mean to say they will take, but they look at, and if they find resonance and depth in what we are presenting, be able to take them for future pandemics and future challenges. Because as I'm saying, these things are not the end. Maybe they are the beginning. Open the person whose hand is up so that we can just hear them, Tato, and then we can go to the concluding remark. Who is there? I can't see the hand of the person, so that's why I'm not mentioning the name. Maybe you see, Tato, you can open the hand. Just be brief as you come in with your question. Is it the same person?
Hi, Dr. Bakari. The name is Apostle Vusi Fele.
Yes, Apostle Vusi. Yes, go ahead, Apostle Vusi. Just give us a short one. Apostle.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to all the speakers. For me, I just want to support Dr. Chirimbula and also my other fellow religious leaders, Hindu and Muslim, that there is a collaboration between what God does and what God does also with nature and also with science. So there's no difference. But also wanted to come out very strong that the so-called anti-vaxxers are not the church. It's all sorts of communities, right? However, it's about providing the right level and relevance of scientific information that can then be disseminated to the different stakeholders and citizens in the country, of which the church is part of the citizens of the country. Yes, there is a springboard from whence the different religions approach the beliefs. But when it comes to human life and humanity, there is a universal belief of the sanctity of human life. And that then, if science is seen to violate that, that's where then you get people not supporting. So I think it would be better that from the onset, the government agencies and which are then in the scientific community disseminate the right information and not be reactive in providing information and just maybe taking the voice of the religion leaders later, or not to be, whenever that voice is taken on board, is seen not to be included in the final outcomes.
Thank you very much, Apostle Fele. Thank you very much for those comments where you indicated in the beginning that it's not the voice of the collective church, but it's the voice of individuals that may be coming from various persuasions. Let us close this matter. Our time is going towards the end, and I'd like to follow the same order as we started with Professor Maharaj. Give us your concluding remarks and your recommendations, followed by Sultan, and then we'll end up with Dr. Winnie
Yeah, I think the pandemic has affected everybody. Even if you didn't get COVID, you are affected. So all of us have been affected, and we want to get back to the new normal as soon as possible. I think we can work. The faith sector is the most powerful organized sector in South Africa. It's more powerful than politics, more powerful than trade unions, more powerful than the private sector. And I think we must assert our positive collective strength to work in partnership with government. And it's clear from what my colleagues are talking about that the communication is not where it ought to be. And if you read the SIU report that was released this morning, you'll understand why that is so, because the money that should have been used for communicating was obviously misappropriated. That has happened, and we need to see how we fix things up. And it's not only about the vaccination and COVID. We've got to talk about other serious matters. I think corruption is a far more serious issue in South Africa than COVID. People don't have water, don't have sanitation. People are getting a substandard education. We need to talk about that. 27 years down the road, how can we as a faith sector play a major role in getting our country back on track? Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Professor. Over to you, Sultan, your closing remarks and recommendations. How do we take this forward? Sultan, you are muted. Can you unmute? If you can,
my recommendation is directed to the leaders and the community. First, when you have the unrest, the looting, because in the COVID-19, people never die when they do so. So we totally disagree with this vaccination story. We only hear it in the media say, and our president say. But as we feel we've been disconnected from the nature, being made so artificial that there's no cure for the COVID, but there is a vaccination for the COVID. That's why I say, and I'm saying again that as they always bring the cure, they bring a medicine, that is the understanding. But the vaccine is something which we don't know. Any sense tomorrow gonna come something else. We still 100% reject it, but only 10% to say yes because you have to travel or go buy something. So for the government, do not make it a mandatory to everybody. Without a vaccine, you can't enter into this hotel. That's gonna kill our economy because our society need more time to understand this. These white people brought things to imposed upon us by our leaders. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sultan. I think I hear your message that we need more time to understand some of these things. Maybe time heals. Dr. Chirumbula, your final comments and your recommendations.
Thank you so much. There is a saying that says, together we can achieve more. In my language, in my native language, which is a Venda, it says one finger cannot take the food out of the plate, which then means that you need the whole hand in order for you to take the food from the plate. So these kind of engagements, they help us in resolving and coming up with solutions. Because now, if we are to sit there alone and say we are Christians, and others sit there alone and say we are the academia, and others sit there and say we are Muslims, we are not going to be able to build these nation. The faith community is the crux, or should I say, it is the heartbeat of every community. And therefore, we appreciate these kind of engagements. And I would want to recommend that let us have more of these. And when we finish here, let it not just be us talking, but let us come up with solutions that we present even to our government to say, we have met, the faith and the science community have met, and these are the recommendations. Just as a prophet said, that we don't only have one, we are not faced with one pandemic. We are faced actually, Prof, with 3 pandemics here in South Africa. Pandemic number 1 is the COVID-19. Number 2, or maybe, let me put it this way. Pandemic number 1 is the gender-based violence. That's pandemic number 1. Now, because that one is specifically directed to it is femicide, the killing of women and children. Number 2 is the COVID-19. And pandemic number 3 is corruption. These pandemics must be dealt with, and we are the people that must face these pandemics head on and deal with them. And unless we have this kind of engagements, we will all be talking in our small corners, and no solution will be brought forth. But as we continue to engage like this, Dr. Maposa, we thank you that we are, at least there is a way that is being paved. We know how the other side of the faith perceive the vaccines, and we need to come up with a solution that will bring to government to say, please help in this kind of sector, so that we get a long-lasting solution to the problems of this nation. I thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Chirumbula. I will close it here by indicating that what we are going to do is to put a report together of this discussion and maybe bring it back to you to see whether what has been recorded is what you say. And this report is usually put in our website as ASSAf and shared broadly a number of policymakers and members of the public. But secondly, as you say, all of you, all 3 of you, we need to continue this discussion. And obviously, maybe once per year or how many times per year, we will have this discussion. It depends upon your availability and your interest in these discussions to continue. For example, in this discussion, we had invited other faiths as well. We had invited the Jewish community, the Rastafarians, the traditional healers. We had invited all of them to speak. And obviously, some of them denied for various reasons, and some of them because of time and other issues. But obviously, we will be able to hold this discussion further and see how far we can go together. As a concluding remark, I saw my leader here. You'll give me 2 minutes because my leader is here, Himla Sudial. I'd like you to just say some words before we can close. Just thank everybody. In the media space, we have somebody who's called an executive producer. The idea behind the concept, and that's what she is. We'd like you to say something, and thank all of you participants and panelists before we close. Are you able to open for Himla, Kato?
Hi, Stanley, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Thanks very much for giving me an opportunity to say something, despite me being in not a very friendly environment. Thanks to all the panelists for your contributions. It's really made the session what it was intended to be. And in the spirit of celebrating Heritage Month, we're very happy to hear from you all. And as Stanley has said, we take your points of view very seriously. We will try to set up an engagement where we have an opportunity for the scientists to come and give their piece of the story so that we could have a good dialogue on this rather debatable topic. But aside from that, we appreciate your thoughts and giving us your time for today's webinar. And we look forward to a future and good engagement with you. Thank you all so much and enjoy the rest of the Heritage Month. Thanks, one and all. Bye for now.
Thank you so much, Professor Sudyal. Thank you so much to all the guests and the panel members, Professor Maharaj, Sultan Sheikh, Dr. Winnie Chirumbula, Tato Morokong was on the technical side working together, and all other colleagues from ASSAf and all participants that were listening to this session. We saw the numbers consistent and no one was leaving. Everybody was listening carefully and participating. We have all your comments on the chat. We'll look at them and include them as well when we produce our reports. Thank you so much. May you have a beautiful day going forward.